Good afternoon, everyone. So a few weeks ago I posted something on Facebook and Instagram about explaining how a calorie is not a calorie. So I just want to kind of expound on that a little bit today. All right, so what do we know about the law of thermodynamics? First, the law of thermodynamics states energy cannot be created nor destroyed. Energy can only be transformed. Right? We know that a calorie is a unit of energy, so we know that with that in mind, as long as we use more energy than we take in, we should lose weight, correct? If we take in more than we use, then we should gain weight. But that's not always the case. If you're looking at the body as an engine, then the law of thermodynamics would apply in a vacuum. However, the body is not a perfect engine. There's so many variables out there. The potential energy we take in is broken down and it's distributed to specific areas of need and used as kinetic energy. These areas make up the endocrine system. Anything the endocrine system does not need to regulate the biological processes is either stored as future potential energy or is deposited as waste. Alright, so the endocrine system, it uses fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. They all have an impact on the system. So they impact the pineal, the pituitary, parathyroid, thyroid, adrenal glands, testes, pancreas, and ovaries. And each one of those requires a specific macros or multiple different macros to function efficiently. When you have an excess of specific macros or your macros are out of balance, it can negatively impact your endocrine system and your overall function. So let's talk a little bit about each macro. So we know that our macros are fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. All right. So we know fats. There's 9 calories per gram of fat. You have your bad fats like saturated and trans fats, which are found in a lot of meats and dairy products. And you have your good fats, your monounsaturated and your polyunsaturated, which are found in your plant oils and in fish. Too many bad fats can lead to cardiovascular disease. You need fats to absorb vitamins and nutrients, so like vitamin A, D, E, and K can't be absorbed in the body unless you have fat present. Fats help regulate your body temperature and they help regulate insulin use. Fats are needed for cognitive function and help increase blood flow to the brain, which helps to release serotonin and dopamine. Alright, moving on to carbohydrates. Alright, so carbohydrates, there's 4 grams per, there's 4 calories per gram of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are made up of simple sugars like glucose and fructose, known as monosaccharides, and sucrose and lactose, known as disaccharides, and complex sugars like starch and fiber. Alright, so carbohydrates are the primary source of glucose, which provides the body's energy, provides cognitive function, and forces the pancreas to release insulin. Insulin helps transport nutrients into cells. Too many carbohydrates will eventually overload the receptors of the pancreas and lead to insulin resistance. When insulin production slows, less nutrients make it into the cells, and then eventually they're stored as fat. Alright, so moving on to proteins. There's 4 calories per gram of protein. I know you're going to hear there's lots of different types of proteins, but for us we're going to talk about 2 types of proteins, animal and plant proteins. Alright, animal proteins are considered your complete proteins as they contain all your essential amino acids needed in the body. Plant proteins are considered incomplete proteins as they're missing at least one essential amino acid. The body needs protein to repair muscle, repair bone, repair skin, and repair hair. Proteins also required in the body to maintain a healthy immune system. One of the biggest bonuses to protein is that it can be broken down into glucose in the absence of carbohydrates. Alright, so we talked a little bit about, and we glanced over fats, carbohydrates, proteins, and how they're used in the endocrine system. So how do you choose a diet that's good for you? Well, that really depends on your goals, your lifestyle, and your beliefs. Just remember, no diet's perfect. Each has its strengths and weaknesses. A couple tips when deciding what to eat: avoid prepared foods. If it comes in a box and you just add water, milk, or butter or something like that, it's probably not good for you. All right, so the government allows trace amounts of toxins to be present in food as long as it doesn't eclipse the single serving toxicity level. So if you end up eating 2 servings, because we never measure anything out, I've seen many people, they think they're eating 1 serving, right? And then I'll measure it out and it's like 4 servings. So if you only ate 1, you won't eclipse the single dose toxicity level. But if you're eating 4 servings at once, you might have just ate a toxic level of mercury or arsenic, and it's not listed on the ingredients. It's inside the box because the government doesn't regulate it that way. Alright, so we'll talk about some of the types of diets out there. I'm sure some of them you've heard of. Alright, so your carnivore or your keto diet. So I know they're different, but they have the same principle. Alright, and it's to eliminate carbohydrates, decreasing glucose in the body, forcing the body to utilize stored body fat as energy. This is, where the law of thermodynamics fails to work in the human body. So I know many individuals that are on the carnivore diet, and they'll eat 12-ounce ribeye, it's a highly fatty steak, and 6 eggs, and they'll eat that 3 times a day. That comes out to a little over 4,000 calories, which is well above just about anybody's daily maintenance to survive. And these people walk around shredded at like 10% body fat, and they barely do any cardio whatsoever, right? So, there's problems with this diet, though. It generally requires supplementation of minerals and vitamins because you're getting almost all your micronutrients from animals. So I know when I tried it, I had to add probiotics and prebiotics because my gut biome was just completely wrecked. All right. There's also been concerns of cholesterol, but everyone that I've seen on these diets, when they got their blood work back, it was actually improved. I know when I was on keto and I went and got my blood work done, the doctor said it was pristine. He said my chances of having a stroke were like 0.002% or something like that. Alright, so you got your vegetarians and vegans. So vegetarians and vegans generally have no problem with cardiovascular disease due to limited consumption of saturated and trans fats. There's multiple different levels of vegetarians, right? So I know some will eat eggs and some will eat fish. And then there's those that completely swear off animal proteins. If you're a vegetarian or a vegan, and you likely have to supplement in protein that contains all your essential amino acids, unfortunately, the only vegan-approved protein that I'm aware of that contains all the essential amino acids is pea protein, and it is straight disgusting. All right, I've been eating protein for 30 years, and when people tell me protein's disgusting, and I generally try it, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good because I remember this stuff from 30 years ago, and that stuff was all pretty bad. I've recently tried some pea protein, and it is like eating gritty vegetable oil. It's just gross. Ugh. So eating a balanced diet is probably the best for most people. Be it a 30-30-40 or a 50-20-30 or however you have your macros laid out. This diet's the best in ensuring you get the most micronutrients available from food for balancing out your endocrine system. That being said, unless you're eating a massive amount of food, you will not likely hit your daily value of micronutrients from food alone. I've taken the most micronutrient dense foods and placed them in a 2,250 calorie diet in the calculator, and they still fall short in hitting your daily requirement for vitamins and nutrients, right? So probably need to supplement some sort of multivitamin, all right, or at least individual vitamins that you're falling short in. Also, if you have other health-related issues like cardiovascular disease or glucose issues, a balanced diet might not be right for you. You might have to be a little bit more direct. All right, let's talk about fasting. All right, so fasting is a good way to help burn a little extra body fat. Your body will only use stored body fat as energy when your glucose has been depleted, right? So generally that happens in the morning because you've been sleeping for 8 hours, hopefully. So you can also deplete your glucose through exercise or by not eating carbohydrates or protein. So by extending that period throughout the day where the glucose is depleted, you're extending the period your body can burn stored body fat. So the problem with fasting is it's really great at burning body fat, but it also impacts your muscle protein synthesis. All right, so if you're not having any glucose in your system, that also means you don't have any amino acids because your body would convert the amino acids to glucose if it needed to. So you cannot build muscle during your fasted period. All right, so we talked about the diets. Let's talk a little bit about supplementation. Right? Don't supplement unless you need it. I hear people all the time telling me they're taking a supplement with no specific need to take it. Like taking an iron supplement when their iron levels are normal, right? They eat plenty of meat. They have no reason to take iron. In fact, it's actually can be very toxic if you take an iron supplement. You don't need to take an iron supplement, right? You take too much of any supplement. Hopefully you only run into the law of diminishing returns and you don't get to those toxic levels, right? Research the supplements you're taking. They may counteract each other or counteract what you're trying to do. For example, I like to take berberine because I have a glucose issue. So I take berberine for reducing my glucose, but it negatively impacts my muscle protein synthesis, right? So if you're trying to gain muscle, berberine might not be right for you. However, for someone like me, I have no problem gaining muscle and have a problem with the glucose, so it makes it worth it, right? So I lose a little bit of muscle, but it also helps me from getting fat, so it's definitely worth it. All right, so on protein, so when you visit your doctor or your nutritionist, they might recite from the American Medical Journal that humans should not consume more than 80 grams of protein a day. All right, so this is old news. It's like 1960s old was when this was written, and they still haven't changed the journal or their minds or anything like that. So in 2011, Dr. Jose Antonio, he performed a study that gave participants an additional 250 grams of protein on top of their current diet. So not 250 grams a day, he gave them an additional 250 grams a day and told them to train as they normally would. He did blood work and body compositions, testing at the beginning of the study and at the end of the study. At the end of the study, they found that there was no negative impacts on blood markers. This includes kidney health, cholesterol, blood pressure, and all that kind of stuff. And despite the fact that the participants were consuming an extra 1,000 calories a day over what their normal daily intake was, they gained no additional body fat. Many lost body fat, and nearly all of them gained muscle. All right. So this study has been repeated multiple times since. So when your doctor says, don't eat that much protein, you can laugh at them because they're wrong. All right, so here's a really big one because I hear people telling me they're eating healthy, right? But are you eating healthy for you, right? So allergies and sensitivities. Just because you don't observe any negative reactions from food doesn't mean you're not allergic or sensitive to those foods. So go get checked. All right. So there's companies like Check My Body Health. They'll do a full panel test for you for less than $50. You just need to go in and send them some hair. This will help you decide what foods are healthy for you specifically, and not just everyone. By avoiding foods that are sensitive to you, you'll decrease inflammation and cortisol, and you will increase digestion. So I found out that I'm allergic to MCT oil, and which is something that they always tell you MCT oil is good for you, right? This is what you should take in place of, any of your trans fats and all that kind of stuff. Well, I always felt when I took it, I always had a little bit of digestion problems and all that kind of stuff and joint inflammation. Well, now I know why, right? So anything MCT oil or coconut or something like that, I can't take, right? A lot of people say those things are healthy for you, so get yourself checked out. All right, so in summary, so we talked a little bit about the laws of thermodynamics and how it applies to the human endocrine system. We talked about calories and how each one of those macros impacts the endocrine system in different ways. We talked about different diets and how to choose one that's specific to your needs and lifestyle, and understanding that they all have gaps. We talked about some supplementation and their needs. And then we finished off with talking a little bit about food allergies and sensitivities. All right, so I want you to go out there, be healthy, get fit, healthy mind, healthy body, healthy spirit, and let's fucking go.